It was supposed to be just another night out with friends. We were bored, restless, looking for something to do that would give us a little thrill. Someone suggested we go explore the old psychiatric hospital on the edge of town. You've probably heard stories like this before. A group of curious kids sneaking into a place they don't belong. I should have said no. I should have listened to that little voice inside me that told me this wasn't just an abandoned building, but I didn't, and I still regret it. The hospital had been shut down for decades. The official story was budget cuts, but the rumors were darker. People said there had been experiments there, treatments that went far beyond medicine. Shock therapy, isolation, sensory deprivation, and things no one wanted to talk about out loud. Some claimed the patients were never released. They just disappeared. We thought maybe it was just graffiti left by other explorers. But the writing was old. The paint around it had faded, and there were dozens of scratches, layered, as if they'd been carved year after year. One of my friends joked nervously, "Guess they didn't like the food." No one laughed. That's when we heard it. A sound from down the hall. At first it was faint, like a shuffle, maybe a rat. But it grew louder. The sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming closer. We froze. Our flashlights pointed toward the noise, but the hallway remained empty. The steps stopped. Then, after a long silence, a whisper. Low, raspy. Impossible to tell what it said, but it was there. We ran. Not out of the building, not yet. For some reason, we thought we could find another way. Maybe prove to ourselves it was just our imagination. We stumbled into what looked like an operating room. Rusted equipment, shattered glass, an old surgical light hanging above a stained table. The stains were dark, and even though decades had passed, I knew exactly what they were. On the floor lay patient files, dozens of them, scattered, torn. I picked one up. The name had been blacked out, but the notes were still legible. They spoke of behavioral modifications, extreme treatments, and unresponsive subjects. The last line chilled me. Subject no longer considered human. Behind me, one of my friends gasped. I turned, and that's when I saw her. In the far corner of the room, a figure stood. A woman, thin, with hair hanging over her face. She didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, head tilted, watching us. We screamed. The lights flickered. When the beam of my flashlight passed over her again, she was gone. The air grew colder. Our breath came in clouds. Somewhere deep in the building, a door slammed shut. And then, one by one, we heard voices. Not whispers anymore. Voices. Layered, dozens of them, echoing through the walls. Some cried, some screamed, some begged. We bolted, running through corridors that twisted in ways that didn't make sense. I could have sworn we were going in circles, but every turn brought us somewhere new. The hospital wasn't just a building. It felt alive, shifting, bending to keep us inside. Finally, we found the staircase. It led down, the basement. None of us wanted to go, but the path upward was blocked by a collapsed ceiling. So we descended. The basement smelled worse. Damp earth, rust, and something sharp, metallic. The walls were lined with doors, each with a small window. Cells. And from those windows, pale hands reached out, grasping for us. We screamed, but when I shined my light, the hands were gone. The cells were empty. At the end of the hall, there was one door. Unlike the others, it wasn't rusted. It looked new, untouched. My friend, shaking, reached for the handle. The moment he touched it, we all heard a voice. Clear, strong, coming from everywhere at once. "You shouldn't be here." We ran. We didn't look back. Somehow, by some miracle, we found the exit. We burst out into the night, gasping for air, terrified, shaking. When we turned to look at the building behind us, every window glowed faintly with light, and in those windows, dozens of faces stared back. We never spoke about it again. Not really. Some of us moved away. Some refused to even drive past that part of town. But I can't stop thinking about that night. About the files, the voices, the figure in the corner. I can't stop wondering if those patients ever left, or if their souls are still trapped there, wandering the halls, waiting for someone to hear their screams. And sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet, I hear it again. That whisper, that same voice, soft and close to my ear. "You shouldn't be here." It was the fall of 1997 when the stories began. Back then, I was working the late shift at a small radio station in Pennsylvania. We'd take calls from truckers, insomniacs, and anyone with something on their chest at 3 in the morning. Most of it was harmless. Requests for old songs, lonely voices rambling into the night. But one call stuck with me. A man's voice, shaky, tired, said he had seen a train where no train should be. He claimed it rolled down an abandoned line that had been shut for decades. He described it in detail. The cars were old, the lights flickering, and the sound of it, not like a normal train, but deeper, slower, almost like a growl. I brushed it off as a drunk caller, until more people began calling with the same story. A farmer who lived by the tracks said he heard the whistle at 2 in the morning, long and low. A group of teenagers claimed they'd watched it pass and saw faces in the windows, pale, expressionless, staring out into the dark. And a retired conductor swore on his life that the number painted on the lead engine belonged to a train that vanished in 1928. That train was called the Midnight Special, and it had never been found. The official record said it left Harrisburg one evening, bound for Pittsburgh, carrying 47 passengers and 7 crew. But somewhere along the way, it disappeared. The tracks were searched, the tunnels inspected. No wreckage, no bodies, no sign of it ever derailing. It was as if the train had been swallowed whole. Families demanded answers. Some believed it was covered up. Others thought it was cursed. But in time, the story faded into legend, until the reports started again. I decided to investigate. At first, it was just curiosity. I interviewed locals, dug through old newspapers, even managed to track down the grandson of one of the missing passengers. He told me his grandmother used to sit by the window every night, waiting, certain that one day the train would bring him back. The more I learned, the stranger it became. The sightings always happened around midnight, always on abandoned sections of track. And always, the witnesses said the same thing. The faces in the windows looked alive, but wrong. Like they wanted to speak, but couldn't. So I did something reckless. I went out to see it for myself. I picked a stretch of line that hadn't been used in 50 years. A place deep in the woods where the rails were rusted and broken. I waited with nothing but a flashlight and a recorder. At exactly midnight, I heard it. The whistle, faint at first, then louder. The ground began to shake beneath me. And then, out of the trees, it appeared. The train was massive, rolling smoothly over rails that shouldn't have held its weight. The engine was blackened with age, but the headlamp burned bright. The cars rattled as they passed, and through the dirty glass, I saw them. The passengers. They sat in silence, dressed in clothes decades out of time. Their skin was pale, their eyes hollow, but every single one turned to look at me as the train moved past. Dozens of faces, locked on mine. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. My body was frozen, my breath caught in my throat. And then I saw him, a man in the very last car, pressed against the window. His lips moved, over and over, forming words I couldn't hear. I grabbed my recorder, praying it would catch. When I played back the recording later, most of it was static. But in the middle, just for a moment, I heard it. A whisper, low, desperate. "Help us." I've listened to that tape 100 times. Each time, I hear something new. A second voice, a scream, the sound of metal grinding. And the strangest part? The man I saw in that last car, I recognized him. I'd seen his face in the newspaper archives. He was one of the passengers who boarded the midnight special in 1928 and was never seen again. Ever since that night, I can't shake the feeling that the train isn't gone, that it still runs, caught between then and now, carrying souls that can't find their way home. And sometimes when the wind is right and the night is quiet, I hear that whistle, long, low, calling, and I wonder if one night it'll stop for me.